Hi friends, it's Unicorn, and today I want to talk about some interesting books that I came across when I was doing research for the Sri Lanka month for the From and About Asia reading project. From and About Asia is a long-term reading project where we celebrate the diversity of Asian culture through reading. And the season 2 of the project will start in May, so a little bit less than 2 weeks actually, and I'm so excited for it. I'll link all the information down below in case you are interested, and please join the Discord for more in-depth discussion. And in May, we'll be reading all about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is always a beautiful but mysterious country to me because I first learned about it through some animation when I was little, and I've been curious about it ever since. So I'm so excited for May. I have 10 fictional books and also 10 non-fictional books in this video I want to talk about, but I have came across a lot more. So I put all the information and also the actual books in a parent blog. I will link it down below as well. A disclaimer here is that I didn't and don't plan to read all the books I mentioned here in this video due to the limited time I have. So all the information I mentioned here are gathered through research. And also I'll try my best to pronounce the authors' names, but I believe I'll butcher a lot of them, so please excuse me on that. So now, without further ado, let's talk about the fictional books first. The first book here is also one of the books that I plan to read. It is called Funny Boy by Shyam Selvastroi. This is a historical fiction set in Colombo. It's talking about a boy who likes to dress as a girl, so he has to keep in terms with his own sexuality and also face the racism that the society gives him. It's set in a time where the militant organization Tamil Tigers was still around, and it's talking about a time where the violence started to encroach the family's comfortable life. This is a debut novel, and it says its masterly leaning of the personal and the political. The second novel here is also a historical fiction. It's called The Road of the Elephant Path by Nihal de Silva. This is the winner of the Gratian Prize in 2003. It is a literature prize for the best work in English for the residents in Sri Lanka. This is a romance story happened between a Shahadi soldier boy and a Tamil girl. They have to escape by feet together and also facing extremely difficult and dangerous situations. In the end, there's a big revelation waiting for them. This book sounds so intriguing, and it has a convincing demonstration of the war and also the difference of people, and also talks about how the differences are feasible through mutual experiences. Then I came across a mystery novel called Chats with the Dead by Shauha Kurinaklaka. This is a murder mystery centered around a renegade war photographer who has to solve the mystery murder of himself. No one who's still alive is actually missing him, and he had so much different things going on in his personal life when he's still alive, and on top of that, he didn't know how he died. This book sounds so fun, and I heard it's a dark comedy of life and death and everything in between, and also it has amazing twists. Then there's a family saga called The Sweet and Simple Kind by Yashni Gunatna. The story was set during Ceylon's turbulent evolution into Sri Lanka, talking about two cousins in one family and how a heavily involved in political family is balancing its languages with religion, its privilege and equity, and also how the two cousins pursue freedoms in their own ways. Next up is another historical fiction and also another winner of the Gratian Prize. It's called The Gem Fruit Tree by Carl Muller. The story is about the burghers community in the late colonial time in Sri Lanka. The burglars are the descendants of the Westerners who came to this island nation, and they are standing out because of their features, and they're seen as always willing to put a party. This is also a novel that is semi-autobiographical, so we can easily see the author in the novel. This gives the novel price and also some very harsh critiques. Then there's a novel called Reef by Ramesh Ganasakra. This is a novel that is talking about a personal chef who's committed to pleasing his master's palace that makes him oblivious to the political unrest that is threatening Sri Lanka. This is a story about a day-to-day people set in a large political background. It's linking people's personal life to the big event in the history. It's also been compared to the works of James Joyce and a lot of other well-known names. Then there's a book that's on my personal TBR for Sri Lanka. It's called The Island of Thousand Mirrors by Naomi Munawar. This is the winner of the Commonwealth Book Prize for Asia and also longlisted for the Man Asia Book Prize. This is a book that is centered around two different women that are on the opposite of the devastating Sri Lanka civil war. One woman is living in a loving family and they have everything they could ask for. And the other one is a woman who lived in the active war zone and her dream is to become a teacher, but apparently her dream was abruptly cropped when she was arrested by the soldiers. The two women's lives are intertwined during the wartime, and I heard the story is heartbreaking but with deep understanding of the culture and history. Next up is A Passage North by Anouk Arabgrasom. This is a book talking about a man who journeys to the northern war zone of Sri Lanka because his grandmother has died under unexpected circumstances. So this stirred up some of his old memories and led him to know the impact of the war and the consequences of all the things. Then there is The Disobedient Girls by Ruth Freeman. This is another historical fiction about two women who has intertwined fates, but this time one of them is a servant who knows that she doesn't mean to be a servant, she's built for finer things, and the other one is a mother who decided to escape her husband and taking her 3 young children with her. This novel is about them exploring their different desires and unite by the shared history and also separate by the different fates of them. I heard this is a novel that is compelling and also captivating. The last fictional book here to mention is a short story collection. It's called In the Garden Secretly and Other Stories by Jin Ayashinagan. This is a collection of stories talking about the defining moments of the narrators who is caught in the moment of the violent changes. The writing is lyrical and the collection is a record of the recent history of Sri Lanka. And talking about recent history of Sri Lanka, let's move on to the 10 non-fictional books that I found interesting. The first one is called The Divided Island, The Stories from the Sri Lanka War by Shaman Subramanian. From the title, we can tell that this book is about the recent Sri Lanka who has just survived from the 30 years of civil war. It draws our attention to the Sri Lanka today, which is a exalted disturbed society. Through travels and conversation, the author showed us how people reconcile themselves from violence and how the state and the religion conspired and how people lived under the shadows of the civil war. I feel like it will be a great overview of the recent Sri Lanka history. Then there's another book that I put on my TBR. It's called The Seasons of Trouble by Rohini Mohan. This is another book that is talking about the aftershock of the civil war, but is centered around 3 people who's living in their day-to-day life. Having survived the war, they're struggling to live because the Sri Lanka state continues to attack minorities like Tamils and Muslims. I heard this book is an excellent reportage and a must-read piece, so I'm really looking forward to reading it. Next up is Running in the Family by the authors of The English Patient, Michael Randachia. This is his recording when he returned to his native island of Sri Lanka in the late 1970s. This is a journal of him retracing the Baroque mythology of his Dutch Ceylonese family, and also a travel note with his beautiful writings. Following is another travel nonfiction. It's called The Elephant Complex, Travel in Sri Lanka by John Giblet. It also travels all across Sri Lanka to reveal the most rich culture and history and also the most beautiful natures. This is also a book about friendship and wonderful encounters as the author meet all kinds of people around Sri Lanka. Next up is the 4th book and also the final book I put on my Sri Lanka TBR. It's called Wave by Shinali Narayanagana. This is a heartbreaking nonfiction talking about Shinali when she lost her family in the tsunami in the December 2004. In this book, she talks about the terrifying moments and her journey afterwards. I heard this book is completely heartbreaking, emotional, and personal, but also very powerful. Next up is a book called Tea Time with Terrorists, Motorcycle Journey into the Heart of the Sri Lanka Civil War by Mark Stephen Meadows. This is another travel journal after the Sri Lanka Civil War, and what makes it stand out is that the author, according to the subtitle, had tea with some terrorists and learned about their stories. Then there's an interesting book called A Year in Green Tea and the Tuk Tuks by Rory Spowers. Rory Spowers is a BBC journalist and an environmentalist. So one year he decided to abandon life in London and start a more ecological and sustainable lifestyle. So he moved his family to a 60-acre tea estate in Sri Lanka and decided to start a model organic farm there. It was that time when the tsunami happened happened and he was suddenly involved in the relief efforts and his business plan had to change. This sounds like a very interesting adventure with a lot of tips of sustainability lifestyle. Moving on to a heavier nonfiction, I have here Still Counting the Dead by Frances Harrison. This is a nonfiction talking about the Tamil people's living situation after the Civil War in 2009. Hundreds of thousands of Tamil people was caught in crossfire during the Civil War and facing very difficult situations afterwards. And because of a very strict media blackout, the world was unaware of their suffering for the longest time. This book exposes the crime towards Tamil people and a lot more other activities. Another book here about Tamil people is called The Tamil Tigers, My Story as a Child Soldier in the Bloody Civil War of Sri Lanka by Naomi de Souza. The author was born in a well-educated, middle-class Catholic family, but she joined the Tamil Tigers when she was 17 in 1987. This book is her recount of how she became a child soldier in Tamil Tigers and answered all sorts of questions of what she has been through. And the last book in this pile of recommendation is called The Cage, The Fight for Sri Lanka and the Last Days of Tamil Tigers by Gordon Swift. This book is talking about the final days of the Sri Lanka Civil War and also debunks some misinformation that was out there. I was super intrigued by this book and I couldn't decide between this book and The Wave, but I finally chose The Wave just because I don't really have a lot of time to read all the books that I want to read on this topic, but it just sounds so informative and interesting. And that's all the books I want to mention in this video. I hope this video inspired you to learn more about Sri Lanka and maybe pick up a book or two. Don't forget to check out the blog post and also all the other information down below and join the Discord if you want a more in-depth discussion. I hope you enjoyed this video and please let me know any of your thoughts about readings for Sri Lanka or any other readings that you are doing right now. And don't forget to say hi in the comment section down below. Thumbs up to this video if you liked it. I hope you happy reading, stay healthy, stay safe. I'll see you in my next bookish video. Bye!